Hey everybody, this is Matt from Finbom. Today I'm at the Boca Bearings shop working on my Shimano Tranx 500 HG. I'm going to be doing some bearing replacements from the standard stainless steel bearings from Shimano, which are great, for these ceramic hybrids that have ceramic balls. So ceramic ball bearings, and then the raceways are stainless. So there's less metal to metal contact and should be a much better free spool, and also a good application for salt water because there's less metal to metal contact to corrode. So what I'm going to do is just start placing these bearings over here so I can grab them. But you'll see I have a bunch of tools out here. I have screwdrivers, flathead, Phillips, pin removal tools, bearing removal tools, wrenches, pliers, synthetic greases, oils, things like that. Those are the things you will probably want to have ready, and a nice rubber mat with these little grips here so that screws, ball bearings, whatever, or not ball bearings, but bearings themselves don't slide off and get lost in your carpet or floor. So once I get all of these open, I can start. So first I'm going to do the spool bearings. It's actually quite easy operation here. First thing you want to do, if you haven't already, or if you're using a brand new spool, you won't need to do this, but you want to tape your line shut so you can actually work on everything. So first things first is I'm going to take this pin out of here so I can replace the bearing. If you don't have one of these toolkits, get one. This one's from Bearing Bad. You can find them on Instagram. They make great stuff. These are also Bearing Bad bearing removal tweezers. They're awesome. Okay, so you just gotta push this pin all the way through into the cavity that's in this side of the tool. Back this sucker back out. Now, keep in mind your pin is gonna be in your tool. So when you get that out, so there's that. How I have pulled these apart, that's pretty easy. You might have a better way. Go for it if you do. If not, I kind of take this guy and just get it closer to the front. And then gently on either side with two flatheads, and kind of gently push with even pressure this bearing off, and it comes off smooth and easy. So what you want to do, if you haven't memorized every bearing size out there, you want to take your bearings and you want to put them up next to your kit and just make sure you're using the right one, and you put your other bearing back. You can run these dry. If you can do salt water, it's probably better to just put a little bit of lubrication in there and let them work the lubrication in themselves. If you have screwdrivers like mine, you can put them like this, do that, and they'll work in. Shimano does grease these. You can run them dry. I'm just going to put a light grease just on the side, nothing crazy, honestly. Push it right back on, nice and smooth and even. Goes on a lot easier than it comes off. Grab a paper towel here, real nice to keep handy. Okay, so first we're going to take our pin, put it around the side. Now they did give me this tool. I might give this a shot. The Bearing Bad one is awesome, and I know it works really easily. Kind of curious to see how this guy works. You're supposed to, I think you're supposed to put this on the corner here and kind of push in. Yeah, to be honest, I might not be the most experienced with this tool, so I'm gonna save that for later once I practice a bit. I'm just gonna use this. I like it. It's easy, it's simple, it doesn't go too fast, you know what you're doing. So put that back here. The trick with this, you want this pin to be even on both sides, obviously, so you can kind of just eye it. Cool, first try, that's perfect. All right, so that's our spool. This is part of the variable braking system. That guy you do not have to touch. right, side plate. So what you're gonna wanna do here is grab a set of flat head. Now the trick that I have on these is when I do this, I put my thumb over it so that I don't lose this retaining pin. I might have a better technical term, but that's what I am using today. And if you put your thumb over it, it's not gonna just pop out and get lost. I have lost these before. It is extremely annoying and very, very hard to find. Okay, so you're gonna take your tool, and you'll notice that from the factory, I mean, there's not a ton of grease in this. There's just a little bit of grease. They know people are gonna use this in salt water. So a little bit of grease is not a bad thing. Match it up with your bearing from Boca. If it looks the same, it is. I'm gonna do the same thing. Whoops. Get my little bit of grease or lubricant. This is lightning lube. There's a bunch out there that people like. I think there's a T9 by Boeing, and Rem oil is supposed to be the same thing. Honestly, I think as long as you're using good lubricant, it doesn't matter which exact brand you have. Just use a really good one. It's not really acidic or something like that. Something that's made for parts like this is going to be just fine. All right, then I have that back in. Be real careful with my retainer here. And put this guy back in. Okay, now keep my thumb over it, and I'm gonna start to inspect. And sweet, that was real easy. First try, perfectly in there. You just wanna make sure it's seated well. If you don't get it your first try, no problem, just keep working on it until you're really confident that's not gonna pop out and cause wear on other parts or permanent damage. That is literally the spool kit. Very fast, very easy. And now you have ceramic bearings, which especially in a bait casting reel like this, to have less rolling resistance is better. So they sound great. Let's check out some free spool. Rock and roll. And I'm sure they'll just keep going and going and going and going and going. It's nice to have free spool on a bait cast like this when you're chucking jigs, so that the line can come off as fast as possible and effortless, because usually you can throw a lure, especially a heavier lure, a lot harder than and faster than the line can even come off the spool. So the less rolling resistance you have on this spool, the more line will come off effortlessly. And on a reel like this with the variable braking system, it's going to engage when it needs to and work. And the two working together, you should have longer casts. So I can't wait to throw some jigs with this, catch some fish. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can always hit up Boca Bearing. Okay, so take off your spool knob, and you're gonna have another retainer right here. To make this a lot easier, you'll want the spool out, but what will make this a bunch easier is to actually take this apart, the side plate and all this stuff apart. It will make it a lot easier to get it back together. So this is where I recommend you grab your camera and you take pictures along the way of different sides as you dismantle the reel. What that's gonna do is allow you to go back in time, a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. You can even record it on a GoPro or something like that. So you can say, oh, I screwed up. Where does this washer go? No clue. How did I take it apart? You rewatch it and you can put it back together without having to look at a schematic, which is not as easy as watching a video of you yourself taking it off in full color, and you know, in a 2D movie is a lot easier. So let's start taking this guy apart. Make sure you're using the right size tools. If it feels weird, you're probably using the wrong size. Make sure you're doing it right. Okay, so this screw I'm going to keep here. This is just a set screw for this piece to lock this chrome nut on the end. So I'm going to keep that together with it. I don't actually think there's a front or a back to this, but I like to put things on the way I take them off as best as possible. And this nut is a lefty loosey, righty tighty one. In some of the reels, like say inside of Italica, righty is not tighty, righty is loosey. So they will show you when and where that's applicable. Just make sure you pay attention, because if you don't, you're going to start breaking stuff. Okay, so there's my cap there. This is spring loaded, so gently take it off. And you should have a washer right there. Okay, this is a pretty new reel, so it's quite clean. Put our star there. Put this here. Now we're getting into the point where you can see this is on quite tight. We're going to remove this. Remember, my system is just take it off, put it straight down, and work from right to left. That's my system. You can use any system you like. If you guys have ever heard that term, slow is fast and fast is slow, this is the exact application. Slower you go, the faster you get this done. The faster you go, the more you'll probably screw up, have to start over, which means you're actually going to be going slower than just doing it right the first time and carefully. Okay, looks literally almost brand new, which this one is. All right, I'm gonna place that gently here. Okay, so I'm gonna leave my screws in there. That's how I like to do it if I can. Take my removal tool. Let's find which one this is. Good to go. Work it in there a bit. Take just a smidgen of that grease. Really what this is, just to reduce the metal-to-metal contact and make that bearing last longer. And also, if it does need to be replaced, it's just a lot easier to get out, honestly, because it's not sitting there with a bunch of corrosion locking it down because there was no grease. So at this point I can put my retainer back on nice and carefully, and remember, this one is really deep in there, so keep that pressure and your thumb on the actual piece itself. Otherwise, when it pops out, you're not finding it. Okay, so it's not in all the way, so I'm going to take this and just kind of work it down. Snaps into place. Checking all my sides. Good deal. All right, so I think that is technically completely redoing all of the spool bearings. So there is that. Now we do have a couple more bearings here. I'm gonna clean the working area off just slightly, like that. Okay. We're gonna open our knob here. And to replace these, I mean, honestly, that works fine. They're not gonna sit there and spin forever, but if you've got the extra bucks for the bearings in here, I think it's worth it. I've had knobs stick, and you know, when you're sitting there fighting a bunch of fish, it can actually wear on you that this thing is taking more effort to turn because the bearings are shot in them. So if you reduce that metal-to-metal contact by putting on a ceramic hybrid bearing, you just might have them last for hopefully ever, or a very, very long time. You know, a lot of this stuff depends on how you take care of your reels. And what I mean by that is, mostly, do you wash your gear after you go fishing, especially in saltwater? Do you rinse it off? You're not supposed to pressure wash and, you know, shoot water into all the cracks. That's not what you want to do. That's the opposite of what you want to do. But are you doing your preventative maintenance of just, you know, simply cleaning your gear? Most people don't. A lot of even my buddies might be like, oh, I'll just buy another when I need it. Well, that's cool, you know, if you have the money for it and all that, you don't really care. It's all good. Me, I'm a little particular. I want my stuff to last, and I really don't want it to break in the field. So I rinse down my reels religiously with fresh water every time I fish and get back to the dock. I rinse my gear down. I rinse my lures down. I don't need rusty hooks if I can help it, because that means they're not going to be as sharp and you have to replace them more often. So that's how I do it. Feel free to do it however you like, whatever makes you comfortable. At the end of the day, it's just fishing, right? You're not getting graded. You're not going to be in trouble. It's your reel. If you need to buy it over again because you didn't do maintenance, no problem. And if you got lucky and didn't do much maintenance and they just lasted, well, awesome. Okay. Flying through this here. Sorry if I'm going too fast for some of you guys that are a little newer to taking these apart and putting them back together, but you can always pause the video. The important part is that the information is here. And you obviously see the difference. This thing will just keep going and 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 going until I stop it. So that is the knob, which was pretty quick. Now this is going to a plastic knob, so if you can find the original thread pattern, that's good. Otherwise, going into plastic repeatedly will kind of strip it out pretty quickly. So I think I'm doing pretty good there. Okay, still good to go. It's kind of funny, you can literally start him and let it sit him down. If it doesn't fall over, it'll just keep going and going and going and going. All right, on to the next. I'm gonna take this guy and just move it over. And now we're getting into that territory where we've got two more bearings, I believe. Maybe it's just one. I believe it's one here and one under there. Okay, so make sure you don't disorient these washers. They do have an angle to them. Put everything back exactly how you took it off. It is so important. So important. I'm just doing a little inspection to see how it looks. Make sure nothing's getting corroded that shouldn't be. I was going to inspect the stack. Now I'm literally just going to remove my stack. There's a healthy amount of grease here from the factory, which is nice. And the grease looks good. It's good color. I think from the factory it comes slightly green, but not excessively green. When you see excessive green, that is bad oxidation. So I'm going to put that back together. Put that down just like that. All right, so now we're going to those tweezers are really nice. Okay, you can see our bearing is hanging out right there on the bottom. It does have one of those retainers on it. I'm going to use a screwdriver to get this guy off. Flathead. This is one of those cases where I know there's a tool to remove this. I don't have it. So I'm going to use my flathead, and my goal is just to not scratch anything up. Just get it off nice and clean without shooting it across the room and losing it. All right, and I believe there's a washer on top here. Right here. Okay. All right, same situation. Okay, let's see how I can do getting this bad boy on. I'll tell you, these small parts can be harder to get. All right. Okay. I'd be lying if I said this one is not tricky. It's a bit smaller to handle. Looks good. Okay. Alright, nice and light, and I'm going to come back and do it tighter once I have both. on small screws, I cannot stress it enough. Use the correct size driver. I promise you will break stuff. Okay, now this part here, this part is not hard, but slightly tricky. The guy's gonna go there. Now your bearing is right under there. Now, I've taken one of these apart. I've taken them actually apart a few times. So I'm pretty familiar with how it goes back. If you haven't done this, you should have been taking a bunch of pictures along the way. Because like I said, reading a schematic is not as good as just watching a video or just watching a photograph. Okay. I'm just matching it up to the other one to make sure it's correct. It is. Same scenario. Oil. And it'll work its way in there. And the grease will stay on the outside. And I'm doing the lightest of coats on grease, guys. Really, really light. Remember, this gets exponentially more fun with the more grease and oil that's on your fingers. Okay. Making sure these are snug. Great. I almost want to do it just one more with this tool. Perfect. Okay. So now remember, we have to put this back on the way we took it off. This guy's got a few parts on it already. Just makes it kind of easier to just put right back in place. Try not to. looking good. Put a little grease on this guy because I know that can have issues if it's not greased. A little bit of grease underneath here too. Okay. Don't go crazy with grease, guys. That is what most people do. It's not what you want to do. And that's our one way right there. Inside here, generally you can just take a look at it and see how it is. You're not gonna have to replace that much. It's not part of the kit at Boca. They don't have a ceramic for it, so until it breaks I would just leave it alone. Do a little bit of oil. And that's literally it. In the end zone here. And never forget your back one. One's got a good amount of thread lock on it. While we're here on the worm gear, I can put a little bit of oil. Okay. Like I've said a lot, make sure everything's studied correctly. If it feels wrong, I promise you, it's wrong. If it's wrong, don't keep doing it. Now this guy, actually like not a crazy amount of grease, but I like some grease in this guy. There's a lot of exposure here. A lot of exposure to the elements. All of this too, just lots of exposure to the elements. It's really not a horrible idea to grease that. Some of the other tranks that I've gotten from the factory have a lot of grease in there. This one's got none. So I'm just gonna do like a light film. Work it around just so it's covering stainless parts and aluminum parts. It's gonna fit on there. And hold that. It's all spring loaded, that's why I'm pushing against my stomach to get that tension on it. Shimano does have a little toolkit that comes with it. You can put it on there. It's probably better than what I'm using here because this is big and kind of sharp on the side, so feel free to use that Shimano toolkit. I'm just being really careful, so I'm comfortable using this, but in general, use their kit. The kit tool, rather. But basically that's about it. You'll put your cap back on. You'll put your locker back on, your set screw back on, your spool back in, and you're done. So that is how to replace it. It'll look just like this when you're done. And go fishing.